Today we're going to do one of my most requested reviews ever by taking a look at the Coda EDC Flute. Stick around. What's up, amigos, and welcome to OcTalk. As I mentioned, today we're going to be taking a look at the recently released Coda EDC Flute. It's been out for about a year, and I've been super excited to take a deep dive and show you guys what this thing can really do. But before we do that, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know whenever I post a new music video, tutorial, or review. Now, a lot of you have been asking me to review this flute, and I would say flute because I want to specify that a lot of people are debating whether or not this is an ocarina. Technically, it is a vessel flute, has a lot of really similar qualities to the ocarina, but Carl Ahrens, the creator of this, who had been working on this for years, a really long time. I've known Carl for literally about a decade. You might remember him from working on mountain ocarinas, and this was his dream for a very long time, and I'm so proud of him and his team for actually making it happen. So for those of you who've been looking forward to this, was it worth the wait? Well, let's take a look. Before we dive in, I also want to talk a little bit about Carl's dream instrument. And knowing him for such a long time, I understand that he very much wanted an instrument that he could take with him wherever he goes, which is why he fell in love with the ocarina. Ocarinas are highly portable and compact, and when made well, they can play very well. What I loved about mountain ocarinas was the shape and size fit perfectly in your pocket. You could throw in your backpack. They were nearly indestructible. He made a couple videos about that. But it never really reached the range that he wanted. And so having the dream of making that super compact size into a 2-octave instrument is pretty cool that he was able to innovate this really interesting octave leap that I'll show you in a second with the 2 different chambers. So how he's marketing this is towards people who are interested in EDC, which is short for everyday carry. And I happen to be somebody who's been obsessed with EDC for a very long time. In fact, when I was in Boy Scouts, I went through this really huge phase of wanting to carry as much gear as I could, and I loved cargo pants, I loved jackets that had a bunch of pockets, and I would stuff it with so many things, and to this day, I still love EDC. So seeing that Carl was aiming for this demographic specifically, the EDC everyday carry audience out there, excited me. And that's exactly what he's marketing towards. If you take a look here, you can see that he's looking at outdoors peoples, athletic people, people who love riding bikes and taking with them in the car and the train and the plane. He's marketing this as the most portable, EDC-friendly musical instrument. And I love the marketing strategy that he's doing with this, even on the packaging. The packaging for this is beautiful. It's meant to be sold in a store, and I love that he has that vision for this instrument. So let's go ahead and open this up. Now the first thing that you'll notice is there's a couple things inside besides the Coda. He has these 2 pamphlets that are meant to show you first of all, where your fingers go, which is pretty cool. He has some general instructions and copy that kind of explains his concept behind the Coda and his vision for it, how you're supposed to use it, where you're supposed to play it, all that kind of things. He explains a little bit about the overlapping notes, which we'll talk about in a second. Making sure that the wind wave stays clear, like just a bunch of information about the Coda. That's one pamphlet. The other one is a fingering chart, which shows you all the main fingerings, but then some alternate fingerings and some songs that you can play as well, which is nice. He also included these little fingering charts that are business card size, which are cool, and a couple different copies of that. So you can put this in your wallet, you can keep it in your pocket. It's just a handy little chart you can practice on the go. And then I don't know if this is going to be available in stores, but when you order it on their website, it comes with this really cool method book, I'm going to call it. It's not really a method book. It's more like a song book, but it looks like a method book. It's this heavy-duty book that starts off with a bunch of playing tips. His vision, again, for the Coda, it might be the same information that's on the little card print thing. And then the advantages of this instrument versus other ones when it comes to EDC. A bunch of songs that you can play, and it doesn't really dive too deep into how to play these songs or the music theory behind it, but so he's just assuming that you know how to read music. But it does have this chart that shows you where the notes are corresponding to the fingerings on the musical staff. Again, if you're familiar with Carl's other company, Mountain Ocarinas, in the past, or if you happen to have one of those, congratulations, those are a rare item now. It has a really similar shape. It's just a little bit larger, which is really awesome. His original mountain Ocarina in C was about 2/3 the size of this. So just by extending it a little bit, he was able to squeeze in another octave, which is crazy. Even the thickness was pretty similar. He does have two different options for the piece. He has a black and then also a white. And I felt like the white, that ivory finish, made it look less like a toy and more like an actual instrument. So that's the one I went for. The concept behind this thing is crazy when it comes to vessel flutes and ocarinas. So basically what you do is you cover these holes. Now you'll notice that there are two holes for every fingering position, like so, except for the left pinky. And that is because each fingering hole plays two notes, but only one depending on which chamber that you're playing. So the first chamber is controlled by these holes on the outside, where the inner chamber is controlled by the holes here on the inside. So essentially, it's like an ocarina within an ocarina. And the wall that separates it is here, in between the tone holes. So even though you're playing the same fingering, unlike a regular double or triple chambered ocarina, you can use the same fingerings to play the same note. So this would be C on the first chamber if I blow in here, and then this would also be C on the second chamber. So just a quick example, hopefully the microphone is okay with this. That's insane. I did experiment with whether or not you could play them together. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it without a lot of practice. It's not meant to be played that way. It is supposed to be an extended range, not a harmony instrument. And there's a couple other really interesting innovations. So the first chamber does have a left thumb hole that you would lift to play the high D, but you can also play the high D on the second chamber by holding down this position, which is the low D on the first chamber. So if I wanted to play high D on the first chamber, I'd lift up all the holes, including my left thumb. And if I wanted to play it on the second chamber, I would cover all the holes except for my right pinky. Okay, so you also have the low B by using your left pinky hole here. It's only for the second chamber. So I can also play that on the first chamber by lifting up everything except this one. He also added a right thumb hole to get the low, I guess it's C sharp, D flat on the first chamber. Instead of having a half hole, because it's kind of difficult to half hole with the size of these finger holes here. Some other additional features is that there is this kind of little hole here to put like a neck strap on, so you can hang it if you wanted to. But instead of having to use it as like a necklace around your neck, he offers an optional accessory, which is the belt clip, which isn't required. I'm still debating if I like the way it looks with the belt clip, but it's pretty handy. Like, I was recently out bike riding and I wanted to take it with me to practice, and I have a little strap on my backpack. I'll show a picture of what it looks like, and I just clipped it on like that, and I felt cool. Just having it there on me, not worrying about it swinging around or anything if it was around my neck. Another optional accessory are these silencers. Now this is a really interesting concept because a pretty big gripe a lot of ocarina players have, or people who are close to the people who own ocarinas, is that they're loud, and when you're practicing they can be a little annoying. But again, knowing Carl for as long as I have, he's always tried to find a way to make it easy to practice without annoying those that you love. And I love that he's offering these as an optional add-on. So basically how the silencers work is, first of all, you would take them out of the bag. They look like this. Basically how they work is that there's two different sizes. There's a large silencer and a small one. And you would take the silencer and clip it into the mouthpiece. Now it's not touching the labium or the edge where it cuts the air flow. It's here on this wall, and it has a little rubber stop that kind of shows you where it's supposed to go to. He includes a couple of videos on his website that explain a little bit more in detail how this works. By stuffing these in here, and then you take the other one and stuff it into this other voicing, it's actually dampening the breath and stopping it from hitting that edge, which is what creates the tone. So this is what it sounds like with it stuffed in. So it's kind of like a musical airiness, like a musical air. And you can hear, to the person playing it, you can hear the difference in the pitch between playing the low notes and the high notes. Like, it's not meant to be recorded that way. This is strictly meant for practicing. And I like that I can still hear like a melody if I wanted to play it. Nobody else can really hear it but me. It just sounds like breathiness, so it's perfect for practicing. The other really cool thing is that he thought ahead on how you can keep these little things with you without needing to carry around an envelope like this. You can actually stick them into the Coda itself. There's a little opening here, and basically you stick in the little silencer like this, and then you put the other silencer on top like so, and that's it. It's always going to be with the Coda, and you never have to worry about losing them. So that's pretty awesome. Now, I talked a little bit about the aesthetics. Let's talk about the ergonomics. So this design of having the hand positions like this versus like this, it is a lot more comfortable, I have to admit. Like, this is the same concept that Carl had with mountain ocarinas, which is that having it in front of you like this tends to be more comfortable on the wrist. You don't have to worry about the strain of playing like this, even though that's more the traditional shape of an ocarina, which is why he distincts this as being a vessel flute and not an ocarina, because that's one of the major things that an ocarina isn't. Even though I still consider like the mountain ocarinas being an inline ocarina, this has so many interesting and strange innovations that maybe it's not an ocarina, question mark, that's up for debate. But in any case, he included these indentations for your fingers that are pretty comfortable. You can kind of see it, that there's a little bit of a bevel to it. Super comfortable. I like that a lot. The difficult thing about this shape in particular, this angle of holding the instrument, is on the high notes. You have to put your pinky here when you reach the high note like this. Now, I got used to it with the mountain ocarinas, but I remember that it wasn't the most instinctive thing to get used to. He did create kind of a little bevel here for your pinky, which naturally goes with the angle or how your finger pivots like that, which is nice. But again, when you're playing like that, having to develop that habit of putting your pinky down there, it could take a little bit of getting used to. The distance between the mouthpieces also takes getting used to. It's so far compared to like me playing my other double and triple ocarinas. Usually the mouthpieces are closer together. So having to shift it, that was a little troublesome for me. But again, I'm just used to playing them closer together, that distance. On that note, because double and triple ocarinas, they tend to require you to lift your fingers and have them lifted up when you're playing the higher chambers. So if I'm playing the lower chamber on a alto C double ocarina, double alto C, I wouldn't have to worry about covering the first chamber holes if I'm on the second or third chamber. But this, to play the upper octaves, you have to go back and cover those holes. So it's more like a tin whistle or any other traditional flute where if you're overblowing, but this is an overblow. So that's one major distinction. But having to remember that if I'm playing like an E minor and I'm playing from the low E on the first chamber to the E on the second chamber, I would have to go do, 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 do. And I've been having a little bit of trouble with that, to be honest. Again, if you have like a tin whistle or some sort of other flute background, that might not be such a problem with you, but because I don't have a lot of experience with the overblowing flutes, that's been a little bit of trouble for me. Now, as for the flute's tone, it does have a little bit of earthiness and texture to it, really similar to the mountain ocarinas that Carl made in the past. And those are supposed to sound like tin whistles or flutes that are accustomed to Celtic music. So it's not a very pure tone like with Asian ocarinas. This definitely has more texture to it, but I love how consistent the tone is throughout both chambers. I love the breath curve. That was probably the easiest thing for me to get used to, was that the breath curve feels really natural. It's a very even breath curve, and it feels good to play. Overall, if you've been looking for an ocarina with extra range without having to require a much larger sized ocarina, this is probably going to be what you've been looking for. I love how compact it is. I love the innovation that Carl put into the fingering system, and being able to squeeze 2 octaves into such a compact flute is extremely impressive. And the EDC lover inside me loves that I have another flute that I can throw in my backpack, that I can clip on my belt onto my backpack wherever I go. Fingering system does take a little bit getting used to, so I'm still practicing it almost every single day, trying to get used to it. But I love the different options, especially with the overlapping notes. That's pretty cool. The one other issue that I noticed with the playing is that because it's plastic, there can be some condensation issues after playing, so you have to give it a sharp blow or suck to get any moisture out of the windway. I'm starting to do it just by habit at this point. If the tone is being diminished at all, if there's any sort of blockage, I can quickly suck out any moisture in the middle of a musical phrase. But again, I applaud Carl on finding his dream musical instrument of 2 octaves, super portable, and I think it looks pretty sleek. So good job, Carl. But if you're more accustomed to the more pure tones of ocarinas, maybe this one isn't for you. But if you're looking for something extremely portable, has a pretty sizable range, and I think looks cool, this might be the one for you. That's gonna do it for this review. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if there's other ocarinas or vessel flutes that you'd like me to review in the future. And give this video a like if you enjoyed it. It helps me to know what you guys want to see more on this channel. Special thank you to my patrons for making these videos possible. And if you'd like to help support me as well, be sure to check out my Patreon link in the description below, where you can see a ton of rewards like MP3s, backtracks, sheet music, one-on-one lessons, and more. So thank you for checking that out. And if you're new to the channel, I'd love it if you subscribed and hit that notification bell so you know whenever I post a new video. And until that next video, hope you guys have an amazing week. I'll see you then.